शाखान्वितांश्च श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौरभक्तवृन्द श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौरभक्तवृन्द श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौरभक्तवृन्द Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare
Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Gokulananda Radha Gokulananda Shri Radhe Jaya Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Goranitai Jaya Goranitai Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Srila Prabhupada Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to another Bhagavad Gita evening session. And thank you all so much for joining us online and offline. I'm very privileged and very grateful and really appreciate it. So as I've mentioned, today we'll be reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, from chapter 4, which is entitled Transcendental Knowledge. So what I'll be doing is that I'll be reading the Sanskrit, and then the transliteration and the translation, and then the purport. By all means, it doesn't necessarily matter if you're watching this online. Please do follow, do repeat to the best of your ability, and then, so we can begin. Before I do though, let's start with Mangala Charan, and then we're gonna Om Jnana Timandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Sarvepe iti yagya vido yagya shapita kalmasha yagya shishtamrita bhujo yanti brahma sanatanam. Sarvepi iti yagya vido yagna shapita kalmasha Yagna Shishtamrita Bhujo Yanti Brahma Sanatanam. Sarvepi ete yagna vido Yagna Shapita Kalmashaha Yagna Shishtamrita Bhujo Yanti Brahma Sanatanam. So now we'll be reading from transliteration by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Sarve, all. Api, although apparently different. Ete, these. Yagna vida, conversant with the purpose of performing sacrifices. Yagna shapita, being cleansed as the result of such performances. Kalmashaha, of sinful reactions. Yagna shishta, of the results of such performance of yagya. Amrita bhujaha, those who have tested such nectar. Yanti, do approach. Brahma, the supreme. Sanatanam, eternal atmosphere. Translation. All these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions. And having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifices, they advance towards the supreme eternal atmosphere. Purport by His Divine Grace. From the foregoing explanation of different types of sacrifices, namely sacrifice of one's possessions, study of the Vedas or philosophical doctrines, and performance of the yoga system, it is found that the common aim of all is to control the sense. Sense gratification is the root cause of material existence. Therefore, unless and until one is situated on a platform apart from sense gratification, there is no chance of being elevated to the eternal platform of full knowledge, full bliss, and full life. This platform is an eternal atmosphere, or Brahman atmosphere. All the above-mentioned sacrifices help one to become cleansed of the sinful reactions of material existence. By this advancement in life, not only does one become happy and opulent in this life, but also at the end he enters into the eternal kingdom of God, either merging into the impersonal Brahman or associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Just bear with me, everyone. Okay, technology. We've become so accustomed to it. Right, you need a... the class. Okay. All right, there we are. Oh, Krishna. Okay, whilst this is loading, let me just repeat the translation again. All these performers who know the meaning of the sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions. And having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifice, they advance toward the supreme eternal truth. Okay. So, first of all, I ask for the blessings and the prayers of all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis that are watching this online. Please excuse me for any mistake or anything offensive that I may say. I find and feel that this is one of the biggest purification for me, because in no way do I feel qualified to be sitting here and to be speaking off from the Bhagavad Gita, but nevertheless, I am, so it's my fortune and I'm really grateful, and at the same time I pray for the mercy of all the devotees. Thank you so much. So let me first begin off mentioning that nowadays yoga has become a very popular thing. So today what I really want to do is I want to just cover about the yoga ladder, and hopefully by the end of this session we have a clearer idea of the different stages of the yoga ladder and the significance and the importance of bhakti yoga ultimately. So nowadays when we look at, lockdown is slowly easing in, and as we go on the street and we look at different shops and different stores around, we find that, many yoga centers are opening. And so we have this huge misconception of what yoga means nowadays. People have a different understanding. Many people think that yoga is just about breathing techniques or different variety of just movement. But ultimately, we know that the understanding of yoga, the meaning of yoga, really means to develop connection with the divine, to develop that link that somehow we've lost in this material world, and that's really the ultimate goal of life in yoga. It's not so much to lose weight or to gain tone or anything like that. Really is to connect with Krishna, to develop our relationship with Krishna. This is the ultimate goal, and this is according to the Vedas. So it's very different, as you can clearly see, as many people think. And yoga is not just a particular process. It's not just one process. understand and we establish actually there are a variety of different processes that leads to the ultimate goal. But of course we understand and we know that Bhakti Yoga ultimately is the ultimate process, actually, if I may say so. It's the ultimate process. But other than Bhakti Yoga, there's also Astanga Yoga, Karma Yoga, Gyan Yoga, Buddhi Yoga, and so on. So the list carries on. And so I was just kind of researching one lecture from Prabhupada, and this was from Pandal. And Srila Prabhupada says that, and in the 6th chapter, Lord Krishna recommended how to practice yoga. Yoga is the beginning of linking up our lost relationship with the Lord. Yoga means adding, addition, or linking, because we are now forgotten. The yoga system, any yoga system means Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Gyan Yoga. There are different names of yogas, but actual fact is how to link up our lost relationship with the Supreme Lord. That is called yoga. So we can understand here that actually, whether it's Karma Yoga, Gyan Yoga, the most important thing is to be linking this to Krishna, to establish our relationship with Krishna. So if we're performing activities in the world, and ultimately, this is what's recommended, this is what was recommended to Arjuna, when Arjuna said that, let me just kind of flee to the forest and let me meditate. No, instead engage in activity, but engage activity for my pleasure. So we're also recommended that, in this Kali Yuga, where practically Gyan is near impossible, better to perform activities, but to perform activities for the pleasure of the Lord, to connect and develop a link with the Lord. So whatever you do, sometimes people think that, the only way is to renounce. The only important thing is to renounce, not to be engaged in activity, not to be engaged in action. But as we can clearly understand and establish that the nature of the soul is to be active, so by us trying not to be active, we're actually attempting to go against the nature of who we are. So rather than trying to go against the nature of who we are, better to dovetail whatever activity that it is we're doing in this material world, but for the service and for the pleasure of Krishna. And also, other than that, it's not only us, it's not only humans, but also animals are practicing yoga. So not just humans, that everyone has come into this material world to ultimately try and establish their relationship and their link to Krishna. Of course, some may take a little longer than others, because the beauty of human life is that we have the intelligence to inquire about the purpose why we're here, the reason why we're here, and for who are we seeking to serve, for who are we seeking to please. So this is the difference between animal life and human life, that human life we have the opportunity to inquire, but too often, rather than inquiring, we're using our intelligence to create advanced technology and to try and enjoy more and to prolong life. But even if we've managed to prolong life, we still can't escape from the clutches of birth, death, old age, and disease. So rather than utilizing our intelligence to try and escape from something that is the law of nature, and something that we can't fight, something that is futile, better to use our intelligence, Buddhi Yoga, better for us to use our intelligence to ultimately come to the conclusion that Krishna is the supreme, Vishnu is the supreme, and that I'm here to surrender service to the Vaishnavas and to Guru and to Gauranga. And in one purport, which is Bhagavad Gita chapter 6 verse 47, Prabhupada says, so in the Bhagavad Gita everything is discussed there: Gyan Yoga, Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Buddhi Yoga, so many yogas. But Krishna says, Savadhamita Prityajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja, which is Bhagavad Gita chapter 18 verse 66. Ultimately, that means if you surrender unto me, all these yogas are included. All these yogas, Karma Yoga, Gyan Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, all yogas are included. So Srila Prabhupada is establishing here that whatever yoga that we're practicing, ultimately the most important thing is that we surrender unto Krishna, that we give all of our results to Krishna. And the importance of this, actually the significance of this, is that we, as we have established, as we know that in Kali Yuga we're very short-lived, we're very forgetful, we're prone to cheating. So practically material nature sometimes can seem and feel it's against us. And so the example that Prabhupada gives is in Nectar of Devotion is just like a small child. If he has a rich father, a rich family, he doesn't require to earn money. He doesn't need to work. He doesn't need to work hard. He doesn't need to make money. The father is taking care of him. The father is taking care of his needs. The father is taking care of his wants. And similarly, when we actually surrender to the process of bhakti yoga, then, whether also we don't have to endeavor to become an expert in Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, or Hatha Yoga. So we don't need to become an expert in any of these yogas, because bhakti triumphs everything. Bhakti, devotion to Krishna, engaging our intelligence, engaging our activities, engaging everything that we do and everything that we are giving ourselves to Krishna, which is ultimately the goal of life. So we can see and establish here that there's variety different processes of yoga are explained in the Bhagavad Gita. And these variety process of yoga, what it does, it gives us a ladder. It helps us to be able to kind of ultimately reach to a stage of bhakti yoga. As Krishna says also in Bhagavad Gita, that there's 4 types of people that come seeking for Krishna. Those that are desiring wealth, those that are desiring wealth, those that are seeking for the absolute, those that are suffering, and those that are also seeking for knowledge. So there's variety of people that come to Krishna. And at least personally for me, I've always felt that the most important thing is that I'm seeking for Krishna. And sometimes we come down, don't we? Sometimes we come with a little bit of misconception that we think we've come to seek for the absolute truth. But then inside our heart is filled with a little bit of desire, maybe desire for wealth, maybe desire for security, maybe desire for comfort. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that's bad. We've all come with some level of desires, and that's why we're here in this material world. But the most important thing that we can do is actually to be honest with Krishna. If we cannot be honest with where we are, then how can we on earth even endeavor to be able to develop relationship with Krishna? A relationship with Krishna means that it needs to be on the basis of honesty. Even though Krishna knows what's in our heart, ultimately it's us that should endeavor, put in effort to be honest with him, to walk towards him. And if we manage to take 1 step towards Krishna, then Krishna will take 10 steps towards us. And that's what the yoga ladder is there for us to ultimately come to the position of executing bhakti yoga. And so the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, and one of the most important thing is that if we want to understand the yoga ladder, we also need to understand the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. And the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, as we know, is that again, as I mentioned earlier on, to give up all of other processes and just surrender unto Krishna. So now just moving on and touching a little bit on the yoga ladder. So we know that the lowest stage of the yoga ladder is the animal life. We know that. In this stage, basically the soul is transmigrating from lower forms of life, and we can say plants, aquatics, insects, reptiles, mammals, and many, many other forms of samsaras. And in this stage, the most important thing to also remember is in this stage is that the soul is just trying to immerse itself, or the animal is trying to immerse itself in sensual pleasure. And we see this when we go out and we may look at the pigeon, or we may look at the different animals there are. All that they're doing is they're mating, defending, and just sleeping, and this is all they're doing. They're just eating and they're trying to mate, and they're trying to live and prolong their life as long as possible. And so it's interesting I say that, because if we look at sometimes the patterns and the behavior of human beings, they're also trying to do the same thing. So it's not just traits in animals, it's also traits in human beings. So even in human life, we can actually degrade ourselves. And that's why it's so important that we develop the right mentality, the Krishna consciousness mentality. Otherwise, we're using our mind to degrade ourselves rather than elevate ourselves. So these are not just traits, these are not just patterns in animals, these are also traits and patterns even in human beings. Even human beings can actually be in the lower stage of the yoga ladder. And this is the reason why, is because when human being is focused on just trying to gratify its senses, like think about it. I find this always so interesting that sometimes we find human beings, they think they're very elegant just because they have a very nice house and a very nice vehicle to travel in, a nice workplace. But Prabhupada always mentioned that there's really no comparison between animal life and someone that's using their intelligence for sense gratification. It may just be that that person is living in a house, but what difference is it wherever he's sleeping in comparison to an animal? You know, animal is sleeping, and they may be sleeping outside, and a human being sleeping, they're just sleeping in a fancy house. But it still doesn't change the activity. It doesn't really change the essence of what's happening. That a human being is wasting their time sleeping, mating, defending, and working very hard for a little bit of sense enjoyment, and that little bit of sense enjoyment isn't even that long enough to enjoy it properly. You know, right after it follows more and more suffering, bills, rents, and variety of things. So, of course, real intelligence means coming to a stage. It means coming to a point where we no longer want to live at the lowest of the yoga ladder, that there must be more meaning and more significant, there must be a purpose to life. There must be something more than just trying to enjoy my senses. And then that's where it kind of really goes to the next stage. The next stage is karma, or religious activities executed with the purpose of receiving material rewards. So there's a difference between karma and karma yoga. You know, for the karma, you can say, or for those that are just slowly kind of coming out of the lower stage of the yoga ladder. You know, people in the world today, they make a lot of decisions that is based on how much more can I exploit, how much more resources can I exploit, how much more can I use. And we find that even sometimes people think, how can I use people to get things to gratify my senses? We see this many times from politicians to even society, parents, children, whatever. We see this pattern. And the only thing is that actually people are very good in convincing themselves to believe that whatever they're doing it for the good of and the welfare of humanity. They're doing it for the benefit of others. This is how deep conditioning samskars can sometimes be rooted. That we're convinced that the things that we're doing is for the benefit of others, that actually we can't even really see that we're doing it just for our own sense gratification. But however, nevertheless, I was mentioning this in one of the previous class, that even if we're performing activities and we're performing it sincerely, and this is something I've personally experienced in my own life, that if we're performing activities and we're performing it sincerely and we're performing it with that focus, that mood of like, you know, that there must be a spiritual nature that goes beyond the material. There must be something more than just me going to work and day in and day out repetitively, repeatedly doing the same thing. What happens is that sincerity, because Krishna, like, you know, in the Bhagavad Gita it says, offer me a flower, a water, a leaf, and as long as you do it with devotion, I'll accept it. So sometimes we'll find in our life that we're in particular situations and we're in particular circumstances where we feel kind of crowded, we feel bombarded, we feel overwhelmed, that we may not necessarily have time to inquire or to really seek out. But as long as Krishna sees that there's sincerity there, as long as Krishna sees that, you know, we're trying to do our work in the world with purity, he reciprocates. And as time gradually builds up, we begin to understand that other than this material nature, that there must be a spiritual nature. There must be a little bit more than the activities that I'm engaged in. And then suddenly what we slowly begin to realize is that, yes, I've got the ritual right, but now it's time that I add an element of spirit, that which becomes spirituality. we begin to inquire, okay, how can I spiritualize my life? How can I spiritualize my activities? And this is like what I've experienced before I joined Krishna consciousness, that I was working day in and day out, working really hard, earning loads of money, trying to enjoy that money. But then there came a point where I started to begin to recognize that, okay, I'm working on a bodily... that okay, you know, I'm working very hard, I'm making X and X amount of money, I'm doing X and X amount of things, but there must be a little bit more. There must be a spirit, there must be a potential for me to be able to spiritualize my life. And that's when I started exploring different spiritual centers, different religions, different philosophies, which ultimately led me to coming into contact with a devotee. And so this is one of the most important things to realize, that actually in our life, it's not that we get the result that we want based on our own arrangements and based on our own effort, but rather the sincerity that we're demonstrating to Krishna will compel him to make arrangements for us. To make arrangements for us so that we come across a devotee, that we come across this philosophy, that we come across Srila Prabhupada's books. So this is a very important element of something to remember, that whatever accomplishments that we are making in our activities, wherever we're progressing in our life, it's not because of our own effort, but because the prayers and the mercy of the devotees, of those around us. A simple prayer that someone may be making on behalf of us to Krishna, yearning for our protection, for our progress, for our advancement. And this is what's helping us. This is what's actually encouraging us and supporting us to be able to make advancement in our life. So that's the next. That is karma. And then after karma, and here's a very important topic I really want to touch on. Here's a very important topic that I want to touch on, that many different religions that we have are based on this principle. Many different religions is actually based on the principle that if I work hard, then I'll get a certain result. And so what it is that actually in many religions we see God as an impersonal or even semi-personal conception. We have that conception of Krishna, of God. Even within our own community, sometimes we can have such a conception of Krishna, of God. And so what happens is that in religions, and I've personally seen this myself and I've experienced it, is that we actually develop an egoistical nature. That actually the goal of practicing spirituality doesn't become to develop humility. It doesn't become to experience a transformation in character. And this is such an important thing to remember, that the reason why we're practicing spirituality is not to become something. Actually, it's not because we want to achieve something. It's not because we want to do something, but rather how much transformation are we experiencing of character? Who are we becoming in the process? The destination isn't so necessarily significantly important, but it's actually who are we becoming in that process. That's the most important thing. Otherwise, you know, as dare I actually reference him, but I really like the quote that Bob Marley says, that what's the use of gaining the world but losing your soul? What's the use in gaining silver and gold if you lose your soul? So this is not what we're trying to accomplish, that, you know, we're not trying to do activities so that therefore we can try and achieve heaven or this and that. It's actually the process of who we're becoming and the lives that we are impacting. So this is not an egoistical nature that we want to develop. Otherwise, what it is that we're developing this relationship of an order and supplier with Krishna, where what it is that, okay, we'll pay a small price, but in return, and that small price meaning that we're going to follow rules and regulations, and in return we achieve heavenly rewards. That's not the goal. All these process that we're following is that so that one day we can actually experience a change of heart, that actually one day we can experience a transformation, that one day we can develop compassion. So this is a very key, important thing to remember, that, so it's not that we're trying to work hard to achieve a certain result, but it's that so we can deepen our relationship with Krishna, we can have a deeper understanding of our self-identity. And when we establish our self-identity, when we develop a deeper connection with Krishna, then we actually realize that how illustrious we are. To practice the process of Krishna consciousness is not that so we put ourselves down. It's that so we realize we're part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. And anything more that we're actually settling for in this world is just degrading us. It's like, we have such a loving family, such a wealthy family, such a prosperous family, but we're trying to settle for something less than that. And so you can actually see the logic in that. There's no logic in that. So this is practically the situation that we're in right now. The Supreme Lord is all opulent, magnanimous, but every quality that the Supreme Lord has, we also have it in quality. So then, in basically this part, in chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, verse 10 and 11 is described. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yajna, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation." The demigods being pleased by sacrifice will also please you, and thus by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods being satisfied by the performance of yajna, sacrifice, will supply all necessities to you. That he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. So the path of karma gives us a glimpse of the path of self-realization. Of course, karma yoga, making us understand that we're not the body. So that's really the important thing. The more we actually engage our senses, here's something I realized: the more we engage our senses in serving the Lord, in pleasing the Lord, in serving the Vaishnavas and pleasing the Vaishnavas, the more realizations that we can get. And this is such an important thing. I was actually mentioning to one devotee the other day, that Krishna consciousness is not such a process that we can philosophically understand it, that we can philosophically come to the truth of Krishna, of our constitutional position. But rather, actually, it's a process of service. It's a process of actually, when we engage ourselves in karma yoga, then what it is that helps us to come to a stage where we're also practicing bhakti yoga. And so one of the most important thing I must say is that, this process is practically open for all of us. For all of us, the opportunity to practice bhakti yoga purely is open for all of us. But one of the biggest challenges we're all experiencing is that somehow we still remain to have faith that we can live in this world and we can enjoy in this world, and actually, we can produce the results that we want in this world. And so this is something that even I try and constantly remember, that I can perform activities, but at the same time, I'm not entitled to the fruit of my activities. And if we can constantly remind ourselves this, then what it is that we actually become more open to the prospect of what Krishna wants to reveal to us, what Krishna wants to enjoy, what Krishna wants to show us. The reason why we're suffering so much is because sometimes we're trying to force our plans to get in the way of Krishna's plans for us. And so as a result, what it is that we're trying to cling on to things that are causing us more injury, that are causing us more hurt, that are causing us more harm. And we think that letting go is more painful than actually holding on. But if we just establish within our own consciousness that whatever I do it, but I'm not actually entitled to the result of what happens. But then what it is that we develop a broad mind. We develop a mind where we can be more inquisitive, where we can be more introspective, where we can begin to learn and see the bigger picture for what it is that Krishna is trying to reveal to us, for where it is that Krishna is trying to guide us. And we begin to understand that actually the events, the situations and the circumstances in our life, there is a more deeper and significant meaning to it than just life happening to us. So these are just some few thoughts that I wanted to share on chapter 4 of verse 30 of Transcendental Knowledge. And yeah, if anyone has any question online, then please do feel free to ask. I always, after the classes, I always have the tendency to check if there is any question online anyway too, and to connect with individuals and see if I can answer it. Also, I thank you so much for your time. Did you have a question? Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, thank you so much for your time and attention. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah, because it's so difficult to talk and there's nobody. I know. It's so difficult. I've been online, so I know. I just can't do it. Difficult. At least what it is that if I'm talking, there's somebody. You want to make some eye contact? Yeah. It's like, who do I make an eye contact to the camera? I've done it. Okay, but the thing is, other than me not looking at the professional, yeah, I need someone to be there. Contact with us. But it's just the energy doesn't there. Imagine you have to do the sphere or the technical subject. Imagine that you're not here. Can I do that? Online teaching. Oh, you do this? First time I did was 12. Here I went 2021. 2011 I did it. Yeah, just talking to yourself. You talk with me? Sorry. Open there a little bit. But this one is full too. This one is full too. I can take it from here. Okay, I'll just have this one. It looks like it's a bit more. You can't take this class. So, why are you sorry? I can't take it. I'm sorry. This Maha and Maha is not different. All mine is the same. So difficult to give a class